Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with New York City jazz vocalist and composer Aimee on the 2022 CD Love and the Catalyst. This album was originally conceived back in 2020 as the pandemic was beginning, and now with the pandemic declared over, it comes out as the live music scene picks up. On this new album, she mixes post-bop traditional themes with her own personal and musical creations on a passionate collection of new tunes. We get into this release, COVID life, and so much more. Enjoy this interview.
As we kind of established already, we caught up way before the world just kind of went wacky and, everything that happened in 2020 up to now. So it's great to catch back up with you.
Yeah, you too. It's so good to sort of be in the mix again and be talking to people about new music.
Absolutely. So I did actually just look through my notes, and it was in 18 with Wings Uncaged. That was when we talked before. So I'm curious right now, before we get into the new album, talk to me a little bit about how you survived COVID. I mean, it was obviously a very tumultuous time, especially for musicians, because everything just fell away immediately and there was so much uncertainty, and even though sports stadiums were filling up, musicians still couldn't perform. So how did you survive that, and how did you subsequently change because of that?
Wow. How did I survive it? I think music was a big part of how I survived it, and honestly, this whole COVID period, we're just now beginning, I think, to take stock and come out of it. I was actually on tour in Europe in March of 2020. I had a very short, 5-date tour that I had been really excited to put together. And as everything was getting very intense, I was traveling from gig to gig in France and Switzerland. My gigs changed on that tour, and one of them actually got canceled, the one in Paris. And I promptly came home, and sort of the hullabaloo of everything, didn't even know if I would be able to get home, but I promptly came home and sat in my apartment for a couple of months and didn't even leave, because coming from Europe, I was one of the people that really was expected to seriously quarantine. I was fine, thank goodness, but I just stayed at home for what ended up being months. I really didn't even leave my place for probably a month and a half, didn't even walk outside. I was terrified like everyone else. During this time, I had a lot of changes. The project that you're seeing now is one that I really intended to do in 2020. The music, of course, that I conceived really changed, because this album actually addresses a lot of the changes we all underwent during that time. I did do some performances that were remote. I did occasionally get together with a guitarist friend of mine, like in the park, and play music. But, of course, I was performing a whole lot less. And that made me realize how absolutely vital music and the community of sharing music with other musicians and also with audiences was just indispensable to me, to my life, to my mental health, to my well-being. So I came out of this, like so many others, with a new appreciation for a lot of things. I also had my own personal challenges. I lost friends, unfortunately, during this time, and family, and my parents, who were in Pennsylvania, they were isolated, and I sort of managed to figure out a way to take care of them. And with the family dynamic, taking care of parents is something I've undergone that shift in my family of sort of becoming more of a caretaker, and that's another change that I've undergone. So many changes, and this project is all about changes. I think that the pandemic sort of realigned some priorities for me. That's sort of a short answer and a general answer, and I know a lot of people can probably relate to that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I guess Love and the Catalyst is the new album, and I'm curious, how relieving is it to finally get this album out, and you can actually perform live, the world's opening up. It was declared
Yeah.
recently that the pandemic is over. So, how does and of course we're all gun shy because, we don't
Yeah.
know what that means because we've thought that before. But I guess just we'll play in that fantasy land for now. How does all of that feel?
I mean, it feels amazing. Getting back to performing, I remember the first couple gigs that I did with live people in front of me, and we were still wearing masks and being careful. It just felt amazing. And like I said, I did more than a few remote concerts during the pandemic time. And at first it was like, okay, we're finding something to do. And I have to say, for me personally, I know everyone felt differently. Over time, I began to realize that wasn't it. That wasn't the same. And sometimes when it didn't work, when maybe the sound didn't work or the connection was fuzzy or there was like a delay and things didn't match up, I actually felt sort of worse. It made me miss more that actual human contact and that sort of sacred exchange we have with live performance. So now it's like water in the desert. It feels amazing, frankly.
So I guess the other part of this, being a part of the jazz community, how have you seen, because I think we're in the recovery now, obviously, how have you seen the recovery, and how do you think it's going to benefit and make the jazz community stronger from your perspective?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that it's a hard question to answer because I think that we're still figuring it out. I know that here, I'm in New York, and there are actually a couple of new venues. We've actually lost a few venues, which is very sad and impacts the community greatly, the jazz community. But we've gained a few new venues. It feels like there's a bit of a shuffle. There are some new doors closed and doors opened. I do think that there is something going on with listeners and audiences that I think there is actually a little enhanced appreciation for the live experience. And when you say to them at a show, please come out and support live music, please support live jazz, they get it. It used to be a little bit of a case you had to make. And I think now audiences really get that. And I hope that carries through. I mean, it remains to be seen. I know I'm being a little more thoughtful about my music and the messages and the performances that I do because the meaning of it has really been made clear to me through this time. It's just that I love performing because there is a moment and an exchange, particularly in jazz, that is absolutely unique. You never know exactly how it's going to go down. You respond to the circumstances, and the live audience really lends their energy to whatever is going on. That's the magic of jazz, really.
What are you hoping the listener gets from this particular album? What's your hope for them, from an artistic standpoint and just in general?
This album is really deep and profound for me. It is a project I started working on before the pandemic, and then, of course, it changed. I had sort of one concept and collection of music for this project, and then after the pandemic, I had a sort of different collection of music and a different concept for the project. It is Love and the Catalyst because it's about change. It's about the changes that we undergo ourselves. It's about the things outside of us that provoke change. It's about how we react to change. There are songs that I wrote on this project that take on quite directly some of the changes that we all underwent. There's a song that is about George Floyd and his legacy for us as a community, for the global community. There's a song about the human toll of the pandemic. There's a song about climate change and our need to notice and react and change ourselves. So, I mean, this might sound quite lofty, and I struggle with I don't want to sound too grandiose. I think it's actually very simple, but this project for me really is about how we respond to the changes and ultimately how we change. What changes do we make in ourselves? I take the music very seriously all the time. It's spiritual to me. It's communal to me. And I like for listeners to think and to be changed by what they hear. I love when music does that to me. I love to listen to something and for it to just alter my perspective, even just slightly, even for the day. So that's what I would like with this music. I'd like for people to be changed.
I think the big thing about what happened during the pandemic is it brought to light things that people probably weren't paying attention to because we were moving so fast. So there was really this whole idea of race inequality and class war and all these things that really kind of got magnified and brought to light. Because honestly, in 2020, the car was kind of teetering on the edge of that cliff no matter what, you know. So it was.
I totally agree.
You know, I mean, we were at a point where it's like, all right, let's just figure it out. And I think that's what I'm noticing with a lot of people that are talking about that time period. There's almost this weird feeling with people that say that they did have good experiences or there were silver linings or there was things that were positive about it. I think at the end of the day, when we do pull back, because we're kind of in that micro sense, if we get back to macro, we're going to be able to kind of analyze and say, you know what, maybe it is good that humanity had the chance to kind of exhale and things got cleaned up a little bit or moved in a direction that's more beneficial for everyone, not just for the upper crust who makes all of the money and, you know, makes all the rules. Maybe all of us should be able to have some level of, you know, feeling better about being alive on this planet.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, think about what got us through this time. It was our essential workers. It was healthcare workers. And these people are the people, unfortunately, in our material-driven society, they certainly aren't valued as much as they should be. And so it was a little lesson, you know, the earth and the ecosphere, I think, taught us a little lesson with this period. And it's sort of up to us what we're going to do with that now.
Well, it's actually apropos that we're talking about these kinds of dire things and the sirens are going off. So
I know. I'm in New York City. I live in the city, so we have that going on.
Yeah, I love it. That's one thing I've really embraced more and more even over the pandemic. It used to be, prior to the pandemic, people were like, sorry, you know, this. I'm like, no, let's do it. You know, let's let the dogs bark. Let's let the birds sing.
Yeah.
Let's let the cops find the bad guys. But, you know, the one thing I want to add to what you're saying, too, you know, over the pandemic, I interviewed more people than I ever did before on the show. And what I realized, it was great. And what I realized over that time is that you artists are also essential to this. And I don't want to cheapen the fact that we have essential workers, but, I mean, can you imagine how dark that time period would have been if you couldn't turn on Netflix, look at visual art, listen to music? It would have been, I mean, so you talk about essential. I'm hoping that when you're talking about people feeling it deeper, that they do understand that these are things like humanity grabs the arts whenever it's needing it the most. But then they kind of ignore it when everything else is distracting them. But at the end of the day, it really is essential to the health and welfare of everybody. I mean, if you couldn't listen to music while you walked or worked out or did this, that, and the other, it's like there would be a level of people that would be lost. So I think that needs to be something that, and I made it very vocal in a lot of interviews that I did, that, you know, I didn't want to put people in weird spots, but I find that artists and musicians and writers are very essential as workers and people in the society to make things healthy and functional.
I think that's totally true. I mean, I know that I had the experience during the pandemic. We were able to see a lot of artists in sort of a more toned down, sometimes acoustic environment. A lot of very popular pop, national, well-known artists, we got to see them with their craft in this sort of stripped down way. And it felt so good, right? I know other people, when you could turn on the TV and see your favorite pop artist in their living room, you know, playing their piano or something. It felt like such a fundamental connection, and it gave you hope. You know, it made you feel really good, and I like that a lot. I have to say that the production values of things, where things got a little more raw and a little less produced, I loved it.
Absolutely. So with your brand new album, where is the best place for anybody to pick it up that will benefit you the best, and where can they find out about live shows, anything that's coming up on your radar?
Oh, that's a great question. The album will be on all platforms in just a couple days on Friday, September 30th. So you can get it everywhere. You can get it on Spotify. You can get it on Apple Music. I really love Bandcamp.com. Why do I love Bandcamp? Because it really supports artists. It is sort of a direct line to the artist, and on the financial side, more of the revenue goes to the artist. So I am there as well. My albums are there. You can find me. I believe it's aimee.bandcamp.com. You can also go to my website, which will lead you to all of these platforms and will lead you to some video and to my other music. That's AIMEEALLEN music.com. I just hope everyone looks out for the album. If you go to Bandcamp right now, you can listen to one of the tracks, and all the tracks will be available in like 48 hours. So
wonderful. Aimee, it's great to catch up with you. Good luck with the release and the return to the stage. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for supporting the music and the artists. We need more and more of this for sure.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and singers in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Aimee for her time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Keep your eyes open wide. Watch the skies.
Neon Jazz.